Welcome to Founder Tactics, a podcast about entrepreneurs and the communities that shape them. I am your host, Julia Lucidi. And today on the episode, I had the opportunity to interview Matias Gutierrez. Matias is the founder of GenoSur, a molecular diagnostics company. They offer everything from the manufacturing and supply chain management of custom medical supplies, diagnostics, and research devices. Their main focus is on the development of DNA collection kits. In this interview, we talked about the role of the entrepreneur, what founders need to really focus on to succeed, and our own mental limitations. You'll be fascinated to hear about how Matias closed his first $10 million government contract in March 2020, and he led the way for groundbreaking solutions for humanity in a moment where the world depended on it. He's truly an icon in the biotech industry. He's broken many barriers, suffered disappointments, but never lost hope. Before we jump in, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast on the platform you're on right now so that you don't miss our latest releases. And it's a huge help to increase our reach as we share these stories. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, welcome. Thank
Cheers.
you for having me.
Thank you for my mug.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's beautiful. Founder Tactics.
Yes. I actually made two more to have at home.
Did you really?
No.
Aww.
But I will.
You can take one. No, I really appreciate it. It's super cool.
All right.
So for us to get started, obviously I know you well. Our listeners, some of them probably don't. So let's start with an introduction. Just share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, my name is Matias Gutierrez. I'm originally from Chile. I consider myself to be an entrepreneur since very young. I've always been looking for ways in which, through whatever I do, I impact society in a positive way. And I think that's what's driven me to do business everywhere and in different areas. My background, after I came out of high school, I decided to do science and I went into biochemistry. From then on, I went to get a PhD on biotechnology. And while I was doing all of this studying, I was also running my company. So I've never stopped kind of like doing business and doing my company. And it's been interesting and fun.
Who did you get like this entrepreneurial spirit from? Was it something that you saw at home or where did you pick up on that?
Well, my father had a business. He was a businessman. So I think being around that was obviously one way to say that, hey, you know what, this is one way to get around in life. My mother was employed, but she was more on the creative side. She was in advertisement. So I think it's a good combination because for me, it's all about being creative. And I think the way to sort of bring that creativeness into the world is through entrepreneurial activities. So I guess it's a combination of their genes and what they do, whatever, you know?
Yeah, no, and I like that you phrase it that way, that being a creative is part of entrepreneurship, because I think that a lot of people separate art from business and like the craft and the creative mind. Like it's almost like creatives are one thing and business people are another thing. Yeah. But for me, I am very much so a creative, and I bring that into the way that I build my company as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's as humans, we have the ability to sort of challenge the way things are through creativity. And if we're not doing that, then maybe we're not being. So
do you find that because you have this creative side to you that maybe that comes more naturally than the business transaction side of it, where you have to talk about like numbers and think about growth and strategy, or do you kind of like flow well between both worlds?
Yeah, you know, when you're a kid and you're doing something that's risky and somebody tells you stop doing that or you're gonna have an accident. So I think it's very much like that. So as you're being creative and you're growing things that are new, things are gonna happen. I think that happens is business. So it's a combination of just like challenging creatively the status quo of whatever you're getting involved in. And as an accident of that, challenging, things fall apart in the way of business.
Yeah.
If you make something that's valuable to people, then people want to have it, or they'll pay for it or whatever. And as given the way that our society is structured and the need of money to sort of buy food and do whatever, I think it's a natural thing that you'll combine that with a way to make the money. And yeah, numbers on. I believe like money is actually very intangible, and it's something that's not really easy to understand and to get a grasp on. Like whatever you think $2 is today is not the same that's going to be in 10 years. So like whatever. I think money is just an accident to all of that entrepreneurial activity.
Yeah, an accident.
Accident, yes.
Yeah, an accident?
An accident.
Or like a consequence or...
Yeah, that too. It's the same, right? Accidents or consequences too.
True.
Yeah.
Like the reaction or...
Action, reaction, yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like from almost like a scientific perspective.
Cool. Yeah, like potential energy, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that that's something that I personally have shifted my mindset around a lot when it comes to entrepreneurship is finances, money, and what it means to work with money and kind of like let go of it. I think that most importantly for me, it's been about letting go. Stepping away from a full-time job to become an entrepreneur means that I had been working for many years with a salary and predictability and security. And yet I have a highly entrepreneurial profile, yet I was very risk adverse when it came to money. So it was very difficult for me to take that step into entrepreneurship because I wanted the security of my salary. Mm-hmm. But it came to a point where it was like, I need to take this step. And in order to take that step, I needed to face money and understand what it was going to mean for me in this journey. And so this actually took me into like a very profound spiritual search of understanding like what is money supposed to mean in life and how should I relate to it. And there's this very strong verse in the Bible that says, you cannot serve God and money. You will either serve one or the other. And I was like, wow, like how strong that there would be like this verse that specifically is talking about like serving one or the other. And why money? Like why not it be something different? Like, I don't know, anything else in the world. It could be anything else, but specifically it talked about money. And I started to read more about what the Bible said about money, about how God calls us to live like a very generous life towards others and to not like hoard money for ourselves and not to keep all the money for ourselves. And so I started taking what felt to me like pretty radical steps of letting go of money and being more generous towards people in a moment where it was like counterintuitive for me to do that because I wasn't making a lot of money. I wasn't bringing in a lot of money. And yet I was taking steps to be more generous so that I wasn't being controlled by money or didn't make my decisions based on what money could provide me, but trusting that God was going to provide for me and that money is more of like this source that comes from him. And, whether I am in an abundance of it or lacking, my trust should always be in the provider and not in the provision. Mm-hmm. And so when I was able to make that shift, I found a lot of joy in giving towards others, giving to people in need, giving to random people, giving to my church, giving in any situation, sometimes even like something as simple as like really joyfully paying for somebody's lunch. And I started to enjoy like resting and not having to feel like I need to save every penny. And I actually felt a lot more tranquility in negotiating because I could understand the value that I was bringing. And I wasn't afraid to stand up for that value and say, this is what I believe my company or my services are worth. And standing in a place where I could negotiate from a standpoint of security and I could even accept less money, but because I wanted to and not because I felt pressure to.
Right. So I think the way I would interpret that verse you found in the Bible, it's about money could not be the purpose, Like that verse in the Bible is saying like either God or the money. But I think the most important thing to take from that is that money cannot be the purpose, because as I was saying before, at least like how I understand it, it's very intangible. It does not exist in that way. So as soon as you come out of the idea that money is a purpose in life, then you become sort of swimming in a new ocean and being able to build value in other ways. It's also important to understand that the way our society and our capitalist systems, capitalistic, what would the word be?
Capitalist.
Capitalist, yes, thank you. Systems work. It's very, very interesting. So we're saying that when you had a job, you would get a salary, that you would feel secure. Then you probably have a bank account. You probably have a credit card. You probably have what is it? What do you call it when you get a car and you have to
a loan, like
you pay monthly for your car. So think about it. Like you've been giving off a certain amount of time on your month. About how much is that? So maybe 160 hours, more or less. You're getting money in return for that. But part of that money you don't really have anymore, because you're paying off your credit card, and you're paying off your car, and you're paying off your house. So what do you have? Like it's like a lot of people are trapped in that dynamic.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So being an entrepreneur, I think, or coming out of that means that you stop believing in that. So it's a way in which you sort of like see things for what they are in a different way. And right now, from what I can hear from you, is that you're still in the process of, okay, let's spend the money that I have, maybe buying lunch for someone, or maybe giving off to church or whatever. But money is not the only
currency.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, it's very much, for example, about my time, my engagement. If I feel that I can put some part of myself towards helping somebody else reach a different place, or do something else, or give feedback, or tell them a different perspective, I think that's also that's my most valuable thing. So that's what I 100%. Give, for example, other than money. I think money is very nice. I usually use it to buy gifts because I love gift giving. But other than that, I've been very lucky, I guess, because I've never needed much money, in the sense that I can live with very little. And even through lives that I've been successful in my business endeavor, I now have money. I don't know. It's not something that I feel tied up to, or I feel concerned about having in the future or not having in the future. For me, it's something that's just there to, help us deal with life and pay for school, and hopefully not have to get in debt, because I don't like debt. I think debt is the way that our system sort of put shackles on people. Yeah.
You said that entrepreneurship is kind of like stepping out of that system, out of that cycle, and I don't know, not aligning perhaps in values anymore with that. Is that what you meant?
I think so. I think it's about this, like, understanding that there's other currencies. Yeah, your business or your endeavor, your company is going to be successful when it stops being about money, unless you're a bank, of course, and something of the sort. Very much about money. But let's think. I don't know. Give me an example of a company you like. What they do.
A company that I like.
Like a startup that you've recently seen.
I have a friend who she's building a company called Investrio, but it is around money. It's about helping people pay off debt and financial education.
Okay, so she's in the business of taking people out of the money thing. That's
correct.
Business. Uber, for example, I don't know, which we enjoy a lot. Uber Eats, let's say, it's in the business of making it convenient to get food on your table without having to go out. So it's about valuing your time. And if it's the driving app, it's about also taking you places without making it a hassle for you to have to go grab a cab on the street and be risking an experience that you may not like because the cab driver maybe made a pass on you, or maybe the cab driver is like cheating on you on the meter or whatever. So all of these things are giving value to the human activity in ways that are not related to money. So as soon as you like stop seeing the money, I think it changes. And I shared with you before this podcast that I'm going to use it now. I shared with you before this, we met for this podcast interview, this thing that's been on my head recently. And it's
the video clip from The Matrix.
Yeah, it's the video clip from The Matrix. Yes, go ahead.
So the video clip from The Matrix is when the kid is looking at the spoon and he's bending the spoon, and then Keanu Reeves comes up and is talking to the kid, and the kid said, don't try to bend the spoon. It's impossible. You need to realize that it's you that bends, something like that.
Right. So the scene's called There Is No Spoon. Neo is coming to see the Oracle to see whether she thinks that he's the one or not. And this is an old movie, but it's a really cool movie. If you haven't watched it, you have to watch it. It's one of the best. And the idea is that the spoon's being bent by this kid, right? And Neo sees this and tries to see if he can also bend the spoon, but interestingly enough, like the takeaway is that there is no spoon. Like and there's no money. That's the thing. Like as soon as you start to realize that all these things that you take for granted, or you think that our society is built upon, or is the fabric of society, it's not. It's not. We don't come together because of money. We don't create because of money. I mean, a lot of people are driven by it, but it's not the purpose. So going back to the verse in the Bible that you were citing.
That's fascinating. Was that the connection you were going to make when you texted it to me? Was it related
I don't know. I've been thinking about it, and it applies to a lot of things. So let's use it for this matter.
Yeah.
There is a spoon.
So what's interesting is that we've been impacted by a couple of like close deaths recently. Like 2 years ago, one of our really close friends died from a brain aneurysm, like out of the blue. And I have a friend, we're actually going to his funeral tomorrow in Melbourne. We went to college together, and he just had some gastro problems that then turned into cancer and liver failure. And, it's just,
I'm so sorry to hear this.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's sad. I'm even more sad for his wife and his child. But one thing that I've been thinking a lot about, especially since our friend Saul died 2 years ago, is like what actually matters in life and what is actually real. Because I feel like when death hits your door, it's almost like the things that you thought were important, like drop, and the things that are super important stand out. And I think that it's really easy for us to lose track of what's most important, which from my perspective are like relationships, people, not like material things and status. And I think that it can be really easy for the world to influence our values to focus on things that like everything's kind of structured to help us focus on things that aren't important. And only when like really difficult things happen, do you realize like what actually stands on a true foundation. And so I've been at first, like when we first started to, kind of experience the effects of our friend passing away, like the grief, like watching his wife go through grief, like supporting her as a church community. And, it's difficult, but I started to like welcome that reflection because I found that it made me appreciate like life more, like literally every breath, like to be able to really appreciate every morning, waking up with energy, with the ability to work out or give my best to whatever work that I'm doing. So I don't know, kind of random, but I feel like when it comes to like what is real, grief is something that can help you touch base with what's important.
Right. It's a strong reality check, and it also emphasizes on the thing that there's things that money cannot help, and there's things that bring us together that have nothing to do with that. So, like, just going back to the previous point, I think once when you look at someone and say that person is rich, think, why is that person rich?
Absolutely. And that's something that I noticed so much more now how people talk about money. Like, I remember I was once like talking to someone in a meeting and they were like, yeah, my company's so poor. And I was like, I would never say that. Like I would never say that about my company, even if I'm not making money. I am so rich because I have so much to offer. God has blessed my work. I can like feel his provision in everything that I do. It's not richness is not financially tied to me. And so I could not, those words, like I remember when I heard them say that, I was like, oh my gosh, like I could never say that because, I don't associate it in that way to the human experience, like being a poor one. Mm-hmm. We have so many good things. We have health, a roof over our heads. I mean, I think also like when having like being from Latin America, like seeing so much suffering, seeing so much poverty, like you come to America and it's like, wow, like this is a very rich country. Mm-hmm. There's so many like opportunities. And so I've just started to notice a lot more how I talk about richness and abundance and also how other people talk about it. And it's just kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think within the startup community is also very interesting. I was listening to a previous episode of this podcast. I was listening to the venture capitalists, how they pick who to invest in. And they're not looking at who has more money or who's going to make money on the next day. They're looking at the people. They're looking at the ideas. Are they going to change the world? Are they going to scale up because like people are going to like it? So yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting way to maybe let go of the noise in science. There's something we pursue a lot which is called signal, and signal is whatever you can see that's above noise. So if you use an example, for example, you're in a party and you're trying to have a conversation, the noise, which is actually audible noise, it's what's impeding for you to understand what the other person is saying. Mm-hmm. And the signal would be the words that are actually coming to your ear and you're able to pursue. So sometimes money, it's just a lot of noise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I find myself often like rethinking what I'm doing with my company and, thinking, is there something that perhaps is not as lucrative that I could be giving more attention to? You know what I mean? Because I feel like it can be really easy for something that is generating more revenue for you to like pull your attention. But is there something else that perhaps isn't as revenue generating, but is more impactful? Maybe will be in the longer future because of the impact that you can have in that area, and just kind of reevaluating. So I'm constantly thinking like, okay, I don't want to blind myself to the opportunities that are there and perhaps I'm not giving as much attention to.
Right. I think it's all about balance, right? So like the cool thing about companies that are starting is that they are in a capital hungry state. So there's a lot you need to do in order to get those funds to sort of keep the ball rolling. So I think you need to do a combination of both, and you would have to jump into activities that would like give you an income right away, because that's going to support the next cycle of ideas. And then you have to set some of that resources aside so that you can go for your crazy ideas that are going to be the ones that are going to take you to the next level, I guess. But it's fun. Like I think that's looking back in when I think about the way I started some of my projects. That first stage where you're like hungry for everything, you're bootstrapping, and you don't know what you're gonna do next day or how you're gonna meet the ends at the end of the month. Oh boy, that's just like.
Are amazing. You thinking about GenoSur?
I'm thinking about GenoSur. I'm thinking about Bioquímica, which are like my two companies, and yeah, definitely like that. Those stages where we didn't know how to pay the bills next day. That I love them.
Really?
Oh yeah. Because that's when creativity does its best, right? Like, and you'll go and find any way to.
Do you want to tell us some stories, maybe about GenoSur or Bioquímica? I don't know which one you might want to.
Sure. So Bioquímica, it's a company that I founded when I was in second year of college. I was very much annoyed by how my professors and most of my classmates thought that within biochemistry and within the school or whatever, the study of living things and cells and whatever is inside cells, like that, all of that basic science had to
That's
be.
That's so technical as a scientist, like whatever's inside cells.
Yeah, let's just keep that as a genre. So they were very much into the study of these things. And I was always asking the question, well, what is this good for? And what are we going to do with all this knowledge? Like, how is this going to be useful for the kid next door? Or like in Chile, they say La Señora Juanita, which is like just like the regular Joe or the regular Jane, right? How is this going to be useful for them? And they say, like, you don't worry about that. Like, we're not about like serving any needs of the industry of our people. Like, this is about generating knowledge about biology and how biology works. That's what we study. And that annoyed me because I was like, no, like just generating knowledge for the sake of generating knowledge is it serves no one. I mean, it serves itself, right? I mean, eventually it will. But I think we're in a position where all of that knowledge needs to be used because Chile is a great economy, a developing country. Some countries would say, but any countries like this, like we all need to sort of put that knowledge into use in order to improve society and take it to the next level, right? There's probably a better word for this, but to sort of like propel ourselves to the next stage. And all of my peers and professors would say, Matias, stop thinking about that. Matias, stop thinking about that. So I created a social network when there were no social networks. So this was back in 2004, 2005. And I got a whole bunch of programmers to do this for no money, almost in Costa Rica. And we created a network of people all around Latin America to talk about this stuff. And to say, hey, applied science is cool. So like I would have to like get a little bit of money to pay a journalist so that the journalist would interview professors that were actually doing applied sciences. And these were my rock stars. And I would bring them into the website every week. And to do sort of interviews also like...
So the interviews would be on your website?
On my website. It was like a magazine/social network. We had a forum that were called, I don't know, what's the word in English? Like where a photo that you could like have conversations online.
Yeah.
Forum? Is that the word? No, I don't think forum is the word.
What is it called?
Forum. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. PHPBB was the name of the... Online forum. Okay, so we would have conversations over there. Like students would be asking, "Hey, I also want to do applied sciences. Where should I go study?" And I would say, like, not my school. and yeah, so back in that day, we had no money, no subscription, nothing, and I was very bad at charging for stuff and very bad at business. So I was just very good at driving these things and trying to.
It grew.
It grew up to, I don't know, we have like 6,000 members all in Latin America. And finally, one day, I saw an opportunity to make a group of students fly to Cuba to a biotechnology conference where like Nobel laureates come. And there's like this Center for Biotechnology and Genetic Engineering there. That was pretty cool. And then I think I made my first sort of business within Bioquímica, which was to get all these students to pay for tickets and to go to this conference. And I didn't make money at the end, but it was fun. And it was a business endeavor in the sense that I had to think about how to make money, how to charge, like to pay everybody, the hotels and whatnot. And I ended up meeting my wife on that trip. So it was a great business.
I was about to say, Costa Rica.
Yeah, that's how I met Danny. The second community that we had was in Costa Rica. And that she was part of that group. So it was super exciting that part of the things I took back other than great experiences was knowing Dani. She's been a companion ever since. So it's been kind of cool.
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
Bootstrapping, 2005, having no money on the company, and sort of like all of the things that happened afterwards is an accident kind of thing. Yeah. Because of, Sorry.
Yeah. No problem. I was just going to say, I remember you telling me about your wife, and then when I met her, I was just like, this chick is so cool. And she's been your partner in crime. And tell us a little bit about her. I think it'd be cool to talk a little bit about how she's contributed to your journey.
Well, I think one of the most powerful things that Dani has contributed to our lives is she believes in me. She truly, deeply believes in me, and I'm getting emotional. Julia,
okay, I love it. Yay! Let's cry.
And yeah, I think that You're going to be like the opera podcast from now on.
Maybe.
So I think that that gives any entrepreneur a source of confidence and a place where to stand when you're being challenged by the many difficulties of building a business and defying the status quo of whatever you're doing. That gives you something that will drive you really far. And I think part of the consequence of Danny's belief on me has been success.
Wow. And you guys have worked together.
Do not show her this podcast.
Don't let her know.
Don't let her know.
She's worked with you as well.
Oh yeah, since after a couple of years after we met in Cuba, we sort of like
in Cuba or Costa Rica?
In Cuba, we met in Cuba in this meeting, scientific meeting. She was one of the students that came from Costa Rica to bought the package from bioquimica.cl. And a couple of years passed by, and then we sort of lost contact for a while. Then we regained contact, and one thing led to another. And then she came to visit in Chile. And then after a year after that, we were living together in Chile. And when she came, Bioquimica had pivoted into a science education company, and we were providing all sorts of tools for teachers to teach science to students in a practical way, meaning that teach science by doing science. And when she came into the country, she was studying a master's on environmental sciences, and she started helping me in the company. So we started working together from that time on, and we split responsibilities. So I was leading the company as CEO of a 3-people show, and she took charge of developing all of the commercial side of it, so customer relationships, selling the products and putting them out, and trying to understand what were the things that were more valuable out of all of the things that we had to offer. So sort of also developing the products and putting products together and telling the scientists in the company that's not going to sell. Stop. That's something only you like. And we were like, yeah, we like it. But she's sort of a very, very sharp mind and very quick mind to see what adds value to the customer. So it's a good balance. There's I don't know if it was a book or a talk that we went to with one of my co-founders, and Ana Moran, a scientist that's also one of these 3 people that started the company with Danny. And we went to a talk, and it was talking about the value of having someone in your team that you don't agree with, that's different from you. And I think that's so true. That's so true. If all of the founders think alike and are always in agreement, then I think there's very little value in that. So with Danny and Anna, we're 3 people that do not see things the same way. And the sooner you get to value that and understand that and pay attention to that and see how rich that is, I think the better you're going to do.
And how do you create a culture of collaboration when people have such differing opinions?
You yell at them now. I don't know. For me, it's about asking a lot. And egos are complicated, so it happens to me that sometimes maybe people that I'm collaborating with don't think that I'm listening to them, but they have no idea. I'm like paying like so much close attention. Wow. So yeah, it's a process of like really taking it in, right? Everybody will have a different way of taking information and advice or ideas in. I just got to go through the process of like bringing it into my mind, seeing how long it sticks for, and always keeping the door open for having somebody else's idea be stronger than mine or more powerful than mine or even better than mine. Because I believe that if my original conception or my original idea is challenged by somebody else in that way, then I've learned and I've grown. Like, it would be super boring if like I lived in a world where everything just was as I thought it had to be.
Yeah.
That didn't change. It would be like very lonely, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And it offers a completely different perspective. Have there been, challenges in leading a team where your wife is a part of that team? Like, how do you preserve the relationship so that it's not...
We sit far away from each other. No, it's truly like one of the things that we did early on is that we define areas that each of us have like, I don't know, like boundaries, right? So she's in charge of that department and I'm in charge of this other department. And we just don't cross in an invasive way so that each of us can grow their own team. We can grow in our own things. We can fail by ourselves.
Right.
Like all of that. So yeah, it may sound crazy, but yeah, having spaces in which each of you exist, it's the way to do it, in my opinion. Because if you're two together, then you're not adding value, right? You're just the same, right? Which could work great maybe when parenting, but it doesn't necessarily like apply very well when you're like actually trying to grow a business. So we do that, and then when the time comes to share, to do presentation, to have a board meeting, then it's different. It's a different stage of the whole thing, right? Then of course the conversation takes it to, hey, this is what I think. This is what I think. You should be doing this other way. And you need to compromise. Like, okay, maybe I'll try this differently. Okay, maybe I'll stop pursuing that project that I feel so passionate about, but it's just draining all of our resources, taking it nowhere. And maybe I just messed up and I shouldn't have done that. And you're right,
Yeah.
So yeah, being open and listening and all of that exercise, same as in any relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a partner, you know this. And if you have friends, you know this. If you're part of a family, you know that in order to stay in that relationship, you need to sort of compromise all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And in what moment of your journey did you say, I want to expand to the United States? Because eventually that's the direction that you took with GenoSur.
Yeah, so this is a lot earlier than GenoSur, but we most of our business is about science education. So that means that we provide to schools, and schools have school years. So that's complicated because there's a part of the year where schools are on vacation and we still need to pay our bills. So our first idea of coming to the U.S. have to do with me living in San Francisco after college for a couple of years and seeing how the economy of the U.S. is so big and so interesting. And they were lacking, and the U.S. lacks a lot of the things that Chile is lacking when it comes down to science education. So Danny and I were like, okay, what if we start selling to the other hemisphere of the world? Then that would mean that while we're on vacation in Chile, like they would be heavy in school. So like maybe we can avoid having this sort of dips within the year in resources by doing that. So that's the first thing that made me think about the States. Then the second thing that happened is that there's within Bioquímica, which is science education, I did my PhD within the company. So we always had a biotech area and a biotech lab. And GenoSur comes out of that biotech lab, and we start developing ideas in which we want to bring cool diagnostics to people that need it by using molecular biology. So the first attempt we did at this was a PCR system back in 2005 to be able to detect really quick whether you had a bacterial or fungal infection for kids that are leukemic and they come with a spike in fever, which is very dangerous, so that the physician could know right away whether to prescribe this or the other medicine and save the kid's life. Then that evolved, and all of this idea behind telediagnostics came about. So telediagnostics is the process in which you grab a kit with supplies to take a sample, you ship this to the patient takes the sample by themselves, and then they chip that back. Or maybe a doctor's office takes a sample and chip it back to the lab, and then in the lab we analyze the DNA or the RNA to understand better what's going on and make a decision. So we're doing this, and we get into Startup Chile, which is this great incubator that came about in Chile around the year 2010. And I meet a whole bunch of people, and one of them ends up building a company around telediagnostics. So this idea grows in his head, and he takes it to the U.S., and they do diagnostics for microbiomes, so the bugs that live within ourselves. And he chooses me to be the factory for this kit.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the same concept behind 23andMe for everybody out there. Like it's just a kit you get at home, you put a sample, the sample travels to the lab, they analyze your gene, and they tell you whether you're going to live long or maybe not so long, and whether you're from here or from there, I don't know.
Right.
So that becomes an interesting business. So we achieved the first what is it called? An hito, like a milestone, milestone of internationalization. And we started manufacturing for this company. So we're making thousands and thousands of kits every week in Santiago, Chile, and shipping them to the United States. This becomes a very profitable business. Danny and I were able to put a deposit on our first in our house through this. And all of a sudden, these guys go bankrupt because they were doing some tricky stuff with health insurance. Oh. So we have to shut down completely, and we have to let go of all the people that are working on this factory.
You had 40 people, right?
I had to let go of 40 people. We were 80, yeah.
Okay.
And when that happens, then I decide again to see whether I can find other customers alike in the U.S., and that's when we started to internationalize GenoSur. So I started coming to trade shows of the industry. Bio is a big one of them, so I went to Philadelphia, to Boston, and to other venues to find clients. And then through a soft landing program from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Chile that's called Go Global, there's comes an opportunity to do this within Miami. So one of the products that I wanted to develop, this was before the pandemic, was about women's health. So the idea would be that this tele-diagnostics idea would be that we send a kit to the house when every woman can self-sample their vagina, and from that sample we can tell back the patient, the woman, about their women's health, meaning whether there's any infection that they should be worried about, whether there's an imbalance in their microbiome, which is all the bacteria and fungi that inhabits the vagina, whether there's other issues with their genes, maybe they're carrying certain genetic risk to develop breast cancer, whatnot. So I was very interested about the idea as a molecular biologist that from this particular sample, we could tell so much about the genetics and the composition of the flora in the vagina and whether there's an infection that could cause cervical cancer. So as you can see from everything that I'm saying, there's so much information that you can grab from this. So this program was meant to be for countries that are within the Pacific Alliance, which is Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and I think I'm Chile, okay? But they decide to include Miami for some reason. And this is the first version of this program. Wow. Yeah. And I say, okay, I'm going to do Miami because I want to get those dollars, the sweet dollars, into our company and get this factory started again. So I think...
Hold up. I thought you said not to follow the money.
I wasn't following the money. I wasn't following the money as I was trying to think about this idea in business, that it would probably take the same effort to conquer Peru that it would take to conquer Miami, and the return on that effort would be higher on going to Miami. And remember again that the idea here is to find a way to get revenue that's on the other hemisphere of the world, so that we don't deal with the stationality of it all.
Yeah.
And the size of the market makes it very appealing. So even though it did have to do with the money, of course, but more on the sense that it would be a way to capitalize the very little resources that we had after the bankruptcy of this company. So we go and we land in this amazing place that actually had Julia in it. So you can only think how amazing this place was. And it does not exist anymore, which is sad. But the death of CIC has brought great things as founder tactics, like founder tactics. So very glad that happened then. And well, anyway, so I'm digressing. So we soft landed CIC and
so explain to our listeners, what is CIC?
So CIC is the Cambridge Innovation Center, and it's a place that was very convenient for GenoSur because it has all of the cool things about a co-work, plus a community around all of the co-works that they have around the world. And they had a third floor in this building near Wynwood, a cool area in Miami, that had lab space.
Yeah.
So that also was very promising in case I needed to do something.
It's a great fit for you.
It was a great fit for me. Yes. So I had very little money. I could the soft landing program paid for a chair in the co-work for me for 6 months.
Yeah.
Coming to Miami was crazy expensive, so I would end up in these very weird places out of the Airbnb. I don't know. Craziness. How can you say when something like you have to put your hand into a pot and say
it's
something?
It's like a mixed bag. Like you get you never know where you're going to get, because in Miami the neighborhoods are very right next to a really nice neighborhood. You'll have a super weird, sketch, dangerous neighborhood right next door to each other. So you can think you're getting an Airbnb. I
ended up in some of those.
Yeah, you can think you're getting an Airbnb that looks nice, and then you're driving up there and you're like, oh, this is actually really dangerous.
Yeah, and it was complicated for me. It was such a dark time after the bankruptcy of this company. Things were really tough. We were really, really close to go under. There was a social upbringing the same year. This was 2019 in Chile that basically happened in October that year that also caused my business that was already, what would be the word in English, Julia, for when you be hit on the ground?
Oh,
how do you say it? There must be a terminology you've already been taken down and then you get more.
Yeah, it's not a terminology that I love, but kicking a dead horse, maybe.
Kicking while you're down.
Kicking while you're down, yeah.
Exactly. So in Espanol, there's llueve sobre mojado. So yeah, anyway, you get the idea. So we were struggling. We had almost no revenue, and then the social upbringing causes a lot of problem in Chile, and the schools have to shut down. So all of the money, the very little money that you can think a country gives to science education was diverted to something else. So we're really in a bad place, and I'm coming to Miami, trying to find new customers, trying to find new clients.
Wasn't that the end of 2019?
It was the end of 2019, so just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I actually was able I asked for Julia for help to get into the CIC directory. So one thing that I thought, okay, maybe I can get some business if I interact with the community within CIC. So you helped me to get into the directory, and that's how I contacted some of my first clients. One of them was in the building, and if I wasn't browsing and scraping through the directory, I probably would not have found them. And then I had 3 or 4 other clients around that I was trying to do business with. But luckily for me, the business cycle of making a proposal to closing a deal was a lot longer than I could wait. So all of a sudden, serendipitously, from one of these bio conferences that I went to, vendor put me in contact with one of the former classmates that he had, and they were a startup on the what is it called, the pharma side, and they needed somebody to provide a lab service. So this was a pharmacokinetic study, and they needed me to make some reagents that were very important to make for their clinical study, and I had the skills. I had not been doing any lab work for the past 10 years, so I was...
Oh, wow. So that's what was happening.
That's what was happening, and there was no money for me to actually pay for a bench on the co-work lab space.
And you weren't even living in the U.S.
I wasn't living in the U.S., so I go and I pitch the CIC team, and I go guys, this is one thing that could save a little bit. We're really going under, and this could give us some money to keep on pursuing new opportunities. But I cannot afford the payment of a bench in the co-work space. So I invent this idea of renting half a bench. Excuse me. Which in retrospect was so funny, right? Tell me what was it like for you guys to get this request?
It's always been a really collaborative company. So I know that CIC was always open to helping entrepreneurs and creating the most constructive space possible. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't something that was frowned upon per se.
Okay. So it wasn't too crazy.
Right.
I was like, oh, please.
It was a little
please.
crazy, but.
I was like, oh, please. And they gave me like a full bench because there's no way to like actually do half a bench. But I was trying to follow through with my requirements. So yeah, I actually put a tape at half of the bench and did not use half of it. So I guess that's how GenoSur sort of started in the US after all of this bankruptcy. So this was like chapter 2. And we were there, and then the pandemic hit. And that sort of like put a pause on everything. And I could not think about coming to talk to my clients anymore. And my clients were thinking about something else. So it was very much, okay, we're going to have to chat down, and we're going to have to turn off the lights. And I don't know. We were in the mode of really like just like this whole U.S. adventures come to an end. And I won't go back to Chile, and I'm desperate to see how I can keep the company going. And I go knock on doors. While I was sitting on Miami on my last trip, I was like trying to see whether I could import gloves or masks from China to sell in Latin America. Mm-hmm. This was early, like February 2020. And the Chinese were like selling one mask for $20, so that wasn't nice.
Oh, wow.
And I go back to Chile and I try to make alcohol gel, like Purell. Mm-hmm. And then I find out that it's very dangerous to make that because it's
flammable.
It's flammable. So no, Matias, that's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, one of these kits that we manufacture for telediagnostics. So again, same idea of the kit that can go to your house for you to self-sample, and then the sample can travel back to a lab. So I'm staying up one day desperate. Like, I really don't know how I'm going to meet the week's end in the company and not have to fire everyone. And I'm sitting down. It's like 4 a.m. and I'm trying to get ideas to come to my head. And all of a sudden, I look at the kid. I'm looking at news about the pandemic. And I realized that one of the key problems that the world was having is that they don't have ways to test. There's not enough labs that can test. Like, we don't know who is sick and who isn't. It's only based on symptoms. So that's driving craziness all over the world. Everybody is shutting down. Like, nobody can come out of their house. Like, we don't know. And I say, okay, I have this thing in front of me. It's a kit. Can I use this kit towards helping people be diagnostic? And I go into YouTube and I ask YouTube, hey, how do you test for coronavirus? And it says it's a nasopharyngeal swab. Okay. Then second question, how do you perform a nasopharyngeal swab? And I see this video of like a person, a doctor putting a stick onto somebody's face, and it goes like all the way down where you would think brain matter is. And I go like, oh shit. So I take one of my kits, I unwrap a swab, I put it inside my nose, and I go into the brain matter until it hits the nasopharynx, and I just like go like this, and I go like, Eureka! I have it. We're going to test using our own kits, and we can put all of this technology, all of the things that I had in the factory, and we can use this to test for coronavirus. And the technology that I had developed, and together with like what some of our vendors had invented too, had like so many good things. So like one of the things that it did was it could preserve RNA, which is the molecule that the coronavirus genome is based on. So it's a very labile molecule, meaning that it can degrade very easily. And this liquid for transport, like it's actually perfect for stabilizing that molecule, and you can ship it anywhere and it will be stable for a month. So that's something that any other technology available at the time was not able to do.
Right.
Then it would do it without needing cold chain transportation. So Chile is a very long and narrow country. And all over the world, the first problem was that in order to test for coronavirus, you would have to use centralized lab because there were like very few labs that actually have the ability to do PCR. So I get this kit together and I start knocking doors on the health care system. And they're like, this is amazing. This solves all of our problems. This is amazing. This solves all of our problems. This is amazing. This solves all of our problems. And they're all asking you like, Matias, are you sure? are you bullshitting us? Like, is this real? Like, is this really does what you're saying it does? And I go like, yeah, it does. Trust in me. I'm a scientist. And they start vetting me. So they're sending other scientists to make questions and
to cross-examine you.
To cross-examine me. And all of a sudden I get this call from the central government. So like the Ministry of Health. And they say like, okay, Matias, we've learned that you have this and you have a factory, right? Yes, I have a factory. And your factory is certified to do medical devices. Yes, it is. And it's registered on the health authority here in Chile. And I go like, yes, it is. And all of this was because of the previous operation from the company that bankrupted. And they say, okay, we've heard back from the scientist. Your stuff seems legit. We want you to be the factory for the whole country. And they ask me, okay, how much is it for a kit? And I'm like, damn. I go like, how can I put a price on this?
Wow.
Normally, when I would have to do the pricing strategy, we would not be in the middle of a pandemic, and a mask or a glove would not be costing 10 times as much from the supplier in China. So, like, I have no idea to put a cost structure onto this. So I just have to kind of wing it, right? So I go, okay, if we were not in a pandemic, this would cost X. And I think I can commit to do this for like 3Xs or 3.5Xs. And I made like
for more?
More expensive, yeah.
Oh, more expensive. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I make like this back of the envelope calculation, and I say, okay, yeah, I'll do it for this much. And a couple of hours passed, and I get this purchase order for $10 million.
Wow.
In 2020, in March.
From the Chilean government.
From the Chilean government. And this was, if you remember, this was the time when, who was in office here? It was President, the crazy blonde guy.
Was Trump?
Trump, yeah. This was right about the time that Trump said, like, no flights were going to come from Europe. Like, that right. Early in the pandemic. That early. It was very early on. It was first days.
Wow.
And yeah, so I get this purchase order, and it's like, wow, I couldn't believe it. It was so complicated because in one sense, like, I had no idea how much money that was. On the other side, I had just made a commitment for a full country to provide for like essential goods. And they were expecting me to do this in a time frame that I was not knowing whether I could really do. So it was like all of a gamble, and I didn't have any money to buy the supplies. So yeah, it was crazy times. It was like all of the emotions.
So the money
together.
like took a long time to hit your account?
Yeah. And the money came right a lot after we actually delivered all the goods. So
yikes.
Years, yeah, maybe a year and something. But the government, given that we were such an essential thing, they helped us get loans. They helped us. We all helped each other. So it was a collaborative effort towards fighting the pandemic. And we were the first purchase of the government for the pandemic. Like, the first thing that was ever bought for pandemic was to GenoSur.
Wow, it's incredible.
I'm super proud to share this with you.
Yeah. And it's like everybody in Chile, or totally knows GenoSur. I mean, you guys were serving the whole country.
Yeah, we became notorious, not for the kit. I mean, I think within the healthcare community, we became very notorious because of these supplies.
Notorious is kind of bad, right? So notorious is...
Oh, notorious is bad?
Yeah, notorious is a bad connotation. It would be like, I don't know, can you think of a better word, Tiago?
Famous.
Yeah, like iconic.
Iconic, yeah.
There's another word, but I can't think of it right now.
Okay,
but yeah,
not notorious. Not notorious. So we became well known for other things later in the pandemic, but this was definitely something that made my company, my biotechnology company,
That's like one order, $10 million.
Yeah, it's out of the world. Like I think no biotech startup, like not even us, ever thought that was going to happen to us.
That could possibly happen.
Yeah. So yeah, it was crazy times, and that's not the end of the story. Well, hopefully that's far from the end of the story, but
yeah.
So we're starting to manufacture these kits. It's crazy. We have a lot of things happen during that time that were like amazing and enable us to provide to the whole country. But Dani, again, my wife, she's very good at coordinating teams of people. I'm more of the creative side, so I'm more of the messy guy. And she starts doing wonders with the factory, and she's got a grasp on this. And I'm just worried about being an advisor. I became an advisor for the government and many other things because I was one scientist that knew a lot about molecular biology. So I was like trying to help them with the testing effort. So now they have the supplies to collect the samples and to test. And the next step is to do the PCRs. So I'm trying to tell them how to do the PCRs, how to scale it up, how to scale it up with which providers to use, what not to do. And they use this resource very well, me as a resource. And one of the things that happened is that the whole world was starving for the supplies. So after I get the PO for 1 million kits for $7 million, I called my factory from which I usually get swabs from, which is Puritan. It's a brand in the U.S. So I called Elaine, the person in charge of international vendors. I go, Elaine, you have no idea I need 1 million swabs. And the first thing that she says, Matias, I'm so sorry I cannot sell you one swab because the White House has just blocked us from selling supplies to anywhere outside of the U.S. because we are also...
in crisis, yeah.
Yeah, we're, what is it called? Like a resource of the country,
Yeah.
And I go like, damn, what am I going to do now? So I start sourcing from China, etc. But going back to the PCR side, there's also a lot of supplies that you need to do PCR. So right after you get the sample, then you need to isolate the genetic information from the virus from all of the things that come from the nose, the nasty stuff, the cells, like everything. You need to isolate the RNA, which is a close cousin to the DNA molecule. So that's the genome of the virus. You need to separate it, and then you can do the PCR. And the supplies to do this RNA purification or RNA extractions were very limited. So I came up with this idea that maybe through the use of chemicals, we could make the RNA present in the GenoSur kit available for PCR reaction without having to purify. So sort of like skip a step. And I became obsessed with this idea because it was something that could solve like so many situations within the test tube. And I was like thinking inside the test tube. And I'm like, okay, if we do this, then we don't have to purify the RNA. So there's no need for already to do any sort of biosafety. So we could make testing labs that don't need to use hoods or need to use a lot of PPE to test for the coronavirus. That's great. A lot of waste is that you don't have to like make such a wasteful thing, right? So even thinking about the environment is kind of cool. And then we're also going to be saving a lot of time because usually isolating the RNA would take an hour or two. So we could make the PCR a lot faster. And if the chemicals can do what I think they can do, then it's scalable too. So again, CIC comes into play. And I go on and tell Dani, I said, Dani, I'm sorry, but you're going to need to stay here, take care of all the manufacturing because I have this idea and I need to pursue it. And I think if we do this, we're going to save a lot of lives. So I need to go to Miami because in Chile, I'm not going to be able to do any research and get the reagents and the chemicals that I need because all the airports and the flights are grounded. So I'm going to need to go to Miami to do this research. And I'm going to be away for a while. And she's, as always, super supportive and says, you go do this, of course. And I grab a team of scientists and I called you and other people from CIC and I said, I need to rent a bigger lab.
Yeah.
And we came into this room called Santa Rosa and we started manufacturing what was later known as Nona amp. That's Nona from my grandmother, who's alive, but she's always responsible for gathering us all. So the idea here was to gather the RNA molecules. So that's why I call it Nona. So it brings the molecules together, the technology. And we spent about 4 months prototyping this technology, and it worked. And we created an amazing technology that allowed for testing of over 1 million people in a record time.
Yeah, I remember you could get results in 4 hours.
Less than 4 hours. We could get results in an hour, but we compromised for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
So that if anything happens, we had to like redo it or whatever within the time we could.
Yeah.
So,
did you have like political issues as you were developing like new solutions around faster testing?
Well, our competition didn't like it. So is that what you mean by
I don't know. I feel like we
issues?
had some conversation about you trying to get some contracts and you got barred.
Well, I definitely got blocked in Miami for like.
Yes, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe this gangster thing that happens, but we're going back from Miami. We've spent a couple of years living now in Miami, and we're going back to Chile because the competition around the health industry is just like not very nice, and I don't know, trying to exist in a community that does not welcome new players, it's not nice. And I feel that's the experience that I've had. And I actually like somebody that saw that we were like a company with great potential, actually like instead of bringing us up and developing us, they blocked us. So be careful out there. I mean, this happened to me in a very good time. I mean, we could have grown a lot more in the U.S. if this hadn't happened. Luckily, our technology and what we were doing was so great that we were able to do it in Chile, and the result of that was growing a $50 million company. But we could have gone into unicorn mode very fast in the U.S. had this not happened to me, and I don't know, that just goes to show that.
So like relationally, people blocked you?
Mm-hmm.
Relationally, reputationally, like how were they?
Ooh, this was out of a movie. There's a group that faked the idea that they were going to invest on us to scale us up, and that they had ways into securing funds for the scaling. And that they have ways of getting contracts with the government, and they have like all of these promises you can imagine. And that in order to do that we have to sign on a joint venture and some legal stuff. So they just kept on telling us the story for a year and a half, and that's what inhibited us from actually becoming a bigger lab in Miami.
Because you were like caught up in this conversation that was nonsense.
Right, and we signed
you did sign an agreement.
Yeah, out of faith, like a good faith. And when it became obvious that they were not going to do any of this and that they were just delaying our existence and others were getting the contracts, then I had to force them to resign on the contract and let me go. But yeah, I was prisoner of this situation, and some very bad people were involved in doing this. Not everybody in the community is a good player, so it's important to understand this and not be as naive maybe as I was. I tend to think the best out of people. I think that's what's gotten me to be successful. But if you're too naive, then maybe being successful is just one of the potential outcomes, and the other one could be that you're disastrously end up in a bad place. So there's all sorts of fish in the sea, and not all of them are nice. So I think I still and I will still continue to be naive and take the best out of people, because I cannot exist in a world where I think that's different. Mm-hmm. But I've grown wiser. Onto who to do business with and who to don't. And also, not everything that shines is gold.
Did you, like, looking back, do you feel like there were signs?
Yeah, a lot.
Can you, like, name a few or some stuff that, like, stood out to you? Like,
I could have done a lot more fact-checking. I could have been harder and demanding for milestones to occur before taking. Yeah, there were a lot of signs. I mean, but you're gonna believe what you want to believe, right? Like, it's show business like that, right? A magician is like that. So if somebody's doing a nice trick and you're buying into it, you're just gonna buy into it. luckily, I had the opportunity to put NoNav into use after we got out of the joint venture, and we ended up having a very successful lab in Miami. Nevertheless, maybe we were not supporting the full state or the full U.S. country with our PCRs, but we definitely did that in Chile, and we were the main lab in Chile for PCR, and we saved a lot of lives and we helped a lot of people. I asked a friend who does video registering to make some videos of our customers and our employees. And I was looking at them like a week or something ago. I had not looked at them ever. And it's just amazing what they say, like what we're providing to people, like how we were like making people feel safe in that short amount of time, how we were enabling them to go see their relatives, how like so many crazy stuff that happened. It was a very tough time that I think the pandemic challenged us as human beings. And some of us came out one way and some of us came out another. And I think a lot of people showed the best out of themselves. And I think that's the kind of people I want to be.
Yeah. I hate it that you went through that. And, I think it's terrible and important to share also, because I think that a lot of people are like, oh, Miami's amazing. But like, don't be naive. Like there's a lot of fraud here. There's a lot of shady people. Fact check, I think, is like the most important thing. Like, don't check with one person, check with like multiple people with who you're doing business with. Like, it's just, you see a lot of stuff happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be good advice. So that's my story, and it was really hard to actually do business in Miami, and also going to industries that are well settled within the city. They're gonna the incumbents are gonna try to protect what they have at all cost.
Well, especially because you were a pretty big threat. You had a pretty, a solid solution, a very profitable one. Yeah. So it's like, if you're small, you're going to fly under the radar. Who cares? Yeah. But if you're actually disruptive, that's when you start to become a threat and,
So
be on people's radars. Seeing you go through like so many changes, and even though it's been, peppered with hardship, you've experienced a lot of success, and I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
And I'm actually, even though you're going back to Chile, and I'm sad that you're going back to Chile, I'm also excited for what, like you're going back like a different Matias. You're not the same Matias who came here.
Oh, definitely not.
In 2019 when I met you.
And I think that as an entrepreneur, it's pivoting, right? You have to pivot. It's part of it's the name of the game.
Yeah.
If you don't pivot, then you don't find the next adventure, then you don't go to the next place. And keeping your mind open to what your new reality is going to be, or what the new product is going to be, or what your next adventure is going to be, it's part of it. And I think that's very healthy. Because if you come into a mode as a person or as an entrepreneur where you think that, okay, I'm just going to set on this and I'm not going to move from here, then that's going to cause frustration and it may not bring you onto success, Like I think a lot of the entrepreneurs that are listening to the podcast have had that they've been stuck on an idea, they've been stuck with a conception of things, and as long as they have not realized that they need to let go, then they are not able to transition, right? A lot of the big stories of the world are like this, I guess.
Yeah. So I do like to bring the conversation to a point around community, because I feel like it's such an important part of the journey as an entrepreneur, is understanding the role that community plays in helping you grow. Anything from like your family, friends, other entrepreneurs, your team. You guys had an incredible team at GenoSur. Who has been community for you, or what has been community for you?
Okay, so I think you're part of various communities, like as you were saying, from your family on. Like you're part of a lot of different communities, and the role that community plays for me is very substantial, because I'm a giver. And that means that if I cannot give to my communities, then I don't exist. So I think that continuously trying to grow communities, to make communities happen, to bring them together, to connect them, it's like a very important part of the way I exist. So I don't know if that answers the question. Maybe I want something else.
I think it's you're by nature a community builder. Mm-hmm. Like I remember you had a WhatsApp group with like everybody who had a lab at CIC. That's something that you as a client wanted to have and wanted to initiate and lead. And so you guys would like borrow resources from one another. And I remember learning about that and being like, wow, like he really knows how to build relationships and create value for everyone. Mm-hmm. So was it twisting a little bit? So, I mean, I guess I understand that you've always like been somebody who contributes and gives a lot. Does that fuel you and energize you for like the difficult moments? Is it like connecting with people? Is it talking to another entrepreneur? Is it, I don't know. What kind of brings you that like renewal?
I mean, I think it's an exercise of giving and receiving, right? So like, it's always like that. You give and receive, you give and receive, you give and receive. So like, as long as you keep that flowing, I think you become part of the communities that you're shaping, or you get shaped by the community. So it's a matter of being part of it. I was listening to another interview in a previous podcast of you, and he was saying like, always say yes to everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What's his name? I forget.
I can't remember who said that.
But yeah, well, so I always say yes to everything. So
somebody,
be the yes man if you get invited to something. So that's part of the idea, right? Like always be accessible and always give yourself onto whatever the situation is. And I think we grow through this process. If like that saying no man or no woman is an island. Is very true. Like mm-hmm. You don't exist by yourself. So communities are the way we exist. And if we are not part of them, then we don't exist, basically. So the role of communities in your life is everything. It's everything. So if you deprive yourself from being part of communities, then your world becomes very little.
I think there's like introverts, for example, who have a harder time connecting with community. Or would comfortably like stay at home. But I feel like that can be, even as myself as an extrovert, sometimes I like hesitate to go out and be in community, and we have that convenience of being at home and getting a lot done actually from home. But I think that whenever I went through like a mental shift of, instead of going out into community and thinking, what is it going to give to me? But thinking, what can I give?
Exactly.
I started to have a much more fulfilling experience in the places that I went and occupied. And so it's interesting because this actually is an insight that I gathered from training martial arts. So I train capoeira, as you know, which is a Brazilian martial art. And we have these events, and it's really interesting because capoeira has its own like political hierarchical system, and it's like a subculture within itself. And I was going to events and I was getting really frustrated because I felt like I didn't get to participate in the way that I wanted to, right? Maybe I didn't play as many games as I wanted to, or I didn't play an instrument or get to sing, participate in some expectation that I had of that experience. And I was coming back really frustrated, and I started to reframe my thinking around the experience. Instead of thinking like, what is it going to give to me? I started to think, what can I give to this experience? I've been training capoeira for 15 years. I have experience. I have things to contribute. Like, how can I start thinking about how I can show up in this space, perhaps to encourage someone, to play a game with somebody who is maybe afraid, or challenge myself in a different way.
Right. And you made the community your own.
Sorry?
You made the community your own. Just stop being an spectator and became.
Exactly. There was like a massive shift, and I started feeling so fulfilled and looking forward to events, whereas before I didn't.
Yeah.
And then I started like organizing different meetups here in South Florida. Like I was like, well, you know what? Music is something that a lot of people are neglecting in Capoeira. I want to practice more music. And so I started organizing weekly music meetups, like close by my house, and like around 10 people will come out and we'll just jam out and practice music, like no pressure. And I started to take more protagonism.
Yeah, evolve.
Yeah, of what I wanted to experience. And I said, if I want to experience this, I trust that somebody else wants to experience it too.
Right. So I think what you're describing is the process of growing within a community, because when you're joining a new community, you have to be an spectator and understand what it's like. And then as you become that spectator, like the next step that you need to take is to actually give back. Okay. So there's this awesome art party event that happens in California that's called Burning Man, that I had the chance to go to once. My community would go every year, but I would be busy with test tubes and pipettes and doing experiments. So I couldn't always go. But the one time that I got to go, I learned about the gift economy. So you cannot spend money on Burning Man. Money is of no use. There's nothing you can buy. The only thing you can do is give. So if you don't know this in advance, which you may not know if you come for the first time as a spectator, and then your friends are going to help you through it. But if you know a little bit about it, then you have to understand that if you don't bring anything to this event, you're going to feel very lonely. You're going to feel very bad because you're not going to exist. So it's like, who was it that said, like, you think, therefore you are? It's like, I think you give, therefore you are, kind of thing. If you don't give, if you don't give, then you're not part of something. You're just by yourself, and that's very lonely. And in the sense of companies and the role that the companies or the new businesses have on society is about that. They have to give something to society that's valuable, and ideally it's not just a credit card, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's such a teaching to invest in ourselves so that we can give. You know what I mean? It's worth it for us to study, deep dive into our interests, into our passions, so that when we go out into the world, we can give something. And I think you don't have to have much to give. You know what I mean? Sometimes it can even just be a word of encouragement or like active listening. That's like a huge ability to be able to really intentionally be present and listen to people. You know, you're giving your attention. I love what you said in the beginning of our conversation, that money is not your only currency. And I like every single time I have one of these podcast conversations, there's always really deep, meaningful things that I carry with me from the conversation. And I would certainly share with you that that's one of them for me, is like money's not the only currency. And to continue thinking about all the other things that I can bring to people, and that those things are really valuable. They're more valuable. And
it's what the Bible was telling you in that verse, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It goes right back to where you started.
Yeah, that's so good. So I wanted to also bring to our conversation, especially now that you're going back to Chile, how would you describe that these past, how long has it been? 5 years have shaped you? Like what Matias is going back? Who is Matias that's going back to Chile now?
Wow. That's a very complicated question to answer to, but the very different Matias. I think I've gone through all of the potential emotions that there are through this past 5 years, from being completely broke and trying to get clients back so that I could like save my business in Chile. So like as what would you say, like when somebody goes abroad, has the responsibility of like bringing the business so like the company would actually subsist?
Like Superman?
Like a Superman, yeah. So that's how it started. I was like knocking at doors and like trying to get that going. And that was some Matias that was would do anything to sort of like keep on dreaming, like get the fuel so the machine would not shut down. And I think from there on, so many things have happened, and I have gone through tough times. I've gone through frustration. I've gone through incredible success. I've gone through dreams of becoming like a person that can contribute through this business to the whole country and the world on COVID testing and healthcare, to having part of that dream collapse as well while still being super successful. So like all of these emotions, like I think it's been hard. Like when you move from a country to another, like you don't understand how much of things are worth. So like you don't know what's the value of milk or what's the value of bread, and then like you say like, oh, but like a pint of milk back in Chile is like this much, but in Miami it's like 10 times as much. So like how much does it worth? Like it's always confusing, right? So I think that's been challenging for me, but all of these experiences have shaped me into a very, very good version of myself. I'm very happy with the place I'm at now, and the last pivoting decision that I made to go back to Chile, because I feel I'm coming as a mature entrepreneur, as a mature human being. I found like peace within myself that allows me to dream bigger. I found also, I guess, wisdom in some of the things that have happened to me, and understanding that there's no spoon, and that basically we can do whatever we want to do if we put our hands on your heads and your spirit and your beliefs into it. So I feel very powerful in that way too, and this evolution of my being, I think it's very positive, because it's brought me to a very nice place in which I can dream of anything, and that doesn't mean that I want to conquer the world. It means that I just want to be happy, enjoy my family, and keep on doing what I enjoy the most, which is bringing back value to my communities.
That sounds like a really healthy place to be.
That's how I feel.
That's great.
Thank you.
I think around here is a good place for us to wrap up.
Okay.
Do you want to share any last words, and also how people can contact you?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not great at it. So if I don't reply to your message, it's just that I'm not great at LinkedIn. So usually better on WhatsApp. So my WhatsApp is +569 8228 8405. That's my Chile number. So that's the best way to contact me. And if not, through Julia or any of my friends, it's very easy to get a hold of me. So I'm happy to get to know you. If you need anything, be helpful if I can. That's what I enjoy doing the most. So you'll be doing me a favor.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you can email us at hello@foundertactics.com if Matias is not answering LinkedIn and WhatsApp, and we'll forward the email over to him.
There you go. And I'm very thankful that you've considered me to be in your podcast, and I hope that this conversation can inspire other entrepreneurs and maybe share a little bit of my experiences and yours onto their success. And it's a tough journey, but it's a fun one too. So enjoy it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, especially the first moments, like when it's hard, when there's like everything is challenging, when there's no money to meet the ends. That's times that an entrepreneur is going to treasure forever. So so enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And that wraps up another episode of the Founder Tactics podcast. Thank you so much for joining us this far, and I hope you really enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.